I sat in my boss's car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The luxurious leather interior smelled of success, power, everything I had been working toward. This car, a gleaming black Mercedes, was a symbol of the life I was finally securing for my family. A future. Stability. Love. Or so I thought. The evening air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain. I had just finished a late business meeting with my boss, who had asked me to wait in his car while he made a quick stop inside the restaurant to pick up an order for his wife. It was supposed to be a 5-minute wait. Nothing unusual. I leaned back in the plush seat, rubbing my temples, thinking about how tired I was. The long hours at work, the countless sacrifices, missing date nights, skipping vacations, all for the promise of something better. For her. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A sleek, dark-colored sedan pulled up to the curb about 20 feet away. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary, until the driver's door opened and she stepped out. My wife. My stomach twisted into knots so tight I thought I might be sick. What was she doing here? She had told me she was out with friends. A casual dinner, just the girls. She even sent me a text an hour ago, "Miss you, baby. Can't wait to see you tonight." I blinked rapidly, trying to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she had decided to grab food too. Maybe. And then, I saw him. The passenger side door of the sedan swung open, and a man stepped out. Tall, confident, dressed a little too well for just a casual dinner. His hand immediately found the small of her back, guiding her in that all too familiar way. The way I used to. A white-hot rage surged through me, but I stayed frozen, watching as they exchanged glances. Loving glances. Glances I hadn't received in a long, long time. I watched as she laughed, an easy, carefree laugh, before he leaned in, brushing his lips against her cheek. My breath hitched. She didn't pull away. She didn't hesitate. In fact, she turned toward him, her hand resting on his chest in a way that was far too intimate. A sharp pain stabbed at my chest, as if someone had physically ripped my heart out and stomped on it. This couldn't be happening. But it was. I should have stormed out. I should have confronted them right then and there. But I couldn't move. My entire body was paralyzed, trapped between disbelief and pure, consuming fury. Then something else caught my eye. The car. That car. I knew that car. I narrowed my eyes, the pieces falling into place. It wasn't just any random sedan, it belonged to someone I knew. The realization hit me like a freight train. Of all the men in the world, why did it have to be him? Suddenly, the weight of betrayal wasn't just hers, it was his too. My blood turned ice cold as they walked into the restaurant together, hand in hand, like some perfect, happy couple. The same restaurant where I had proposed to her 5 years ago. The irony was sickening. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached, my pulse roaring in my ears. My fingers itched to do something, anything. Grab my phone, take a picture, storm in there and flip the table on them. But I didn't. Instead, I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think. To wait. Because if she thought she could betray me this easily and walk away unscathed, she was dead wrong. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The drive home that night felt longer than usual. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind was a chaotic battlefield, flashes of my wife's laughter, the touch of her hand on that man's chest, the way she leaned into him like she belonged to him. But the worst part? I knew that man. It wasn't just some random stranger, it was my colleague, Daniel. Daniel, the smooth-talking, ever-charismatic coworker who always had a way of charming everyone in the office. My boss had considered him my competition for the recent promotion I had been working toward. But I never saw him as a threat. Not professionally. Never personally. But now, it all made sense. The lingering glances, the inside jokes between them at company events, The way she suddenly seemed more interested in my work stories whenever his name came up. I had been a fool. The moment I got home, I sat in the dark, staring at our wedding photo on the mantel. It had been 5 years. 5 years of love, sacrifice, and dreams of a future. I had given her everything. And she had thrown it all away. For what? For him? I wanted to scream, to smash something, to burn every memory of her right then and there. But I forced myself to breathe. I wouldn't act out of anger. Not yet. Instead, I started digging. The next morning, I left early, but instead of heading straight to work, I parked a block away from our house and waited. At exactly 9:45 a.m., my wife walked out, wearing the same dress she had worn the night before. She glanced around, as if making sure no one was watching, before slipping into a car that wasn't hers. Daniel's car. I clenched my teeth as I watched them drive off together. She didn't know I was following her. For the next few days, I tracked their movements. I watched as they met at cafes, drove to secluded spots, exchanged stolen kisses in parking lots. I recorded every moment, took screenshots of texts she had unknowingly left open on her laptop. I was no longer her husband. I was a man on a mission. And I was collecting evidence. By the time Friday rolled around, I had enough proof to destroy her. But I didn't just want revenge. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation, the same devastation I felt when I sat in my boss's car, watching her betray me. I reached out to my boss. I asked him to schedule a company dinner at a high-end restaurant for the entire office. It would be a celebration. He was finally making his decision about the big promotion, and both Daniel and I were in the running. Of course, my wife would be invited. That night, she walked in, looking radiant as ever, acting like the perfect supportive spouse. Daniel sat across from us, flashing me his usual fake grin, completely unaware that I had been watching him all week. They had no idea what was coming. Halfway through the meal, as laughter filled the air, I stood up and tapped my glass. "I want to take a moment to appreciate my beautiful wife," I began, my voice calm and steady. She smiled, clearly caught off guard. "She's been my rock through everything. And I'd like to show everyone here just how much she means to me." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. The restaurant fell silent. On the screen, clear as day, was footage of her and Daniel, kissing in his car, entering a hotel together. Gasps erupted from our coworkers. My boss's expression hardened. Daniel turned pale. My wife's face drained of all color. I turned to her, my voice dripping with venom. "Tell me, love. Was he worth it?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Then I looked at my boss. "Still think he's the right man for the promotion?" Daniel shot up from his seat, stammering, but my boss raised a hand, silencing him. "Get out," he ordered. The night had only just begun, but for them, it was over. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. But my wife wasn't done with me yet. I should have expected it, the tears, the excuses, the desperate pleas. She followed me home, banging on the door. "Please, it was a mistake. I love you. I swear, it didn't mean anything." I finally opened the door and met her tear-streaked face with ice-cold indifference. "You meant everything to me," I said. "But now, you mean nothing." The next morning, I sent the divorce papers. It should have ended there. But then, I got a text. From Daniel's wife. I saw the video. "Can we meet?" And that's when things got really interesting. The text from Daniel's wife, Emily, sat on my phone like a loaded gun. I saw the video. "Can we meet?" I hadn't thought much about her. In my mind, she was just another victim of Daniel's lies. But something in her message felt different. It wasn't just heartbreak. There was a sharpness to it. A quiet fury. Curious, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe the next morning. She was already there when I arrived, dressed impeccably, her makeup flawless, her fingers rhythmically tapping her coffee cup. When she looked up at me, Her eyes weren't filled with sadness. They were filled with purpose. "I knew," she said, her voice cutting through the morning quiet. "I knew he was cheating. I just didn't know it was with her." I sat down slowly. "You knew?" She gave a bitter smile. "Men like Daniel don't change. He's been doing this for years." "But your wife?" She let out a dry chuckle. "That's the twist I didn't see coming." I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "So why did you want to meet?" Her expression darkened. "Because I don't just want revenge. I want destruction." Emily slid a small envelope across the table. "Open it." Inside were photos, dozens of them. Daniel. My wife. Other women. "Daniel isn't just a cheater," she said. "He's a predator. He's been sleeping with multiple women at work, including interns." My stomach churned. "Why didn't you expose him sooner?" She smiled coldly. "Because I didn't have proof. Until now." I clenched my fists. My public takedown of Daniel had humiliated him, but this? This was a career-ending, possibly even criminal, scandal. "Here's the kicker," Emily continued. "Your wife wasn't just some naive woman caught up in an affair. She knew." I froze. "What?" "She wasn't just his mistress," Emily said, leaning forward. "She was his accomplice." The air left my lungs. She helped cover up his affairs. She encouraged him. She even played the cool wife when women got suspicious. And guess what? Emily's voice turned razor sharp. She was sleeping with him before you even got married. My vision blurred. My heart pounded in my chest. 5 years. 5 damn years. All a lie. Emily leaned back, watching me closely. "So, what do you want to do?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. There was only one answer. Burn them down. The plan was set in motion immediately. Step 1, legal warfare. I met with a lawyer that same afternoon. The divorce papers I had sent were only the beginning. Now, I was taking everything. My wife had no prenup, and I had proof of her infidelity. Legally, that meant she was entitled to almost nothing. Step 2, corporate exile. Emily forwarded the evidence of Daniel's misconduct to HR and our CEO. Within hours, he was fired. Step 3, public exposure. A week later, at what was supposed to be my wife's birthday dinner, I made my move. I invited all of our closest friends and family. Everyone who had ever thought we were the perfect couple. Then, just as the cake was about to be brought out, I stood up, raised my glass, and smiled at her. "To my wife," I said. "The love of my life. The woman who taught me that sometimes, fairy tales are just horror stories with prettier covers." Confused murmurs filled the room. My wife's eyes darted around nervously. I took out my phone and, with a single press, played a video on the projector screen. Photos. Messages. Recordings of her and Daniel. The room erupted. Gasps. Screams. Accusations. My wife turned to me, horror on her face. "Please." I set down my drink. "Sign the papers, pack your things, and get out of my house." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Emily, sitting across the room, raised her glass to me in silent satisfaction. My wife lost her reputation. Daniel lost his job, his power, and his wife. And me? I walked out of that room, free for the first time in years. But as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A single message appeared. "You don't know the full story yet." And just like that, I realized this wasn't over. The cold night air bit at my skin as I stood outside the restaurant, staring at the message on my phone. "You don't know the full story yet." My pulse pounded in my ears. Who the hell sent this? I hesitated for a moment, then typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Whoever it was. They were watching. I barely slept that night. The fallout of my revenge had unfolded perfectly, My cheating wife was publicly humiliated, Daniel was ruined, and I had secured my legal victory. I should have felt relief, satisfaction, closure. But I didn't. That message gnawed at me, an itch I couldn't scratch. By morning, I had a new text. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th. Noon. Come alone. Against my better judgment, I went. The cafe was nearly empty when I walked in. I scanned the room, expecting to see Emily or some other familiar face. But instead, a man sat alone in the back, sipping coffee like he had all the time in the world. He was older, maybe mid-50s, dressed in a sharp suit, exuding quiet authority. As I approached, he looked up and smirked. "You're a hard man to reach." I remained standing. "Who are you?" He motioned to the seat across from him. "Sit." Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't a request. I sat. "I saw what you did to Daniel," he said, swirling his coffee. "Impressive." I clenched my fists. "You didn't answer my question." The man exhaled through his nose, studying me. "I'm someone who knows things. Someone who can offer you answers. If you're ready for them." I scoffed. "I already have my answers. My wife cheated. Daniel was a lying bastard. End of story." The man shook his head. "No. That was just the surface. I'm talking about the real story. The part you missed." I narrowed my eyes. "What part?" He leaned in. "The part where your wife wasn't just sleeping with Daniel. She was working with him." My breath caught in my throat. "Working with him?" The man nodded. "Daniel wasn't just your competition at work. He was setting you up. Your wife helped him. They were planning to sabotage your career, leaking information to make you look incompetent, making sure you were never the one getting promotions. Everything you've struggled with at work. Not a coincidence." My mind reeled. The long hours, the missed opportunities, the projects that mysteriously slipped through my fingers. It was them? I clenched my jaw. "Why?" He shrugged. "Daniel wanted your position. Your wife? She wanted freedom. If you got fired, she could leave with a clean conscience, take half your assets, and ride off into the sunset with him." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Joke's on them. He lost everything. She lost even more." The man's expression darkened. "You sure about that?" I froze. "I did some digging," he continued. "Your wife's been moving money out of your joint accounts for months. Small amounts, nothing noticeable. By now, she's got a hidden stash somewhere." I felt the walls closing in around me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. "She was always planning to leave you," the man said. "But Daniel? He was just a stepping stone." My throat went dry. "What do you mean?" The man slid a small envelope across the table. "Open it." Inside were pictures. My wife. With another man. Not Daniel. I stared at the images. The timestamps were recent. As in, days after I exposed her and Daniel. "She's already moved on," the man said. "And trust me, this guy? He's worse." I closed the envelope, gripping it tightly. The anger inside me wasn't just burning, it was an inferno. "I have to stop her," I muttered. The man smirked. "That's where I come in. People like her. They don't just deserve public humiliation. They deserve to lose." I exhaled slowly. "What do you want in return?" He shrugged. "Nothing. Yet. Let's just say I like seeing justice served. Real justice." His words lingered in the air. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. And I was ready. As I left the cafe, the weight on my shoulders didn't disappear. It got heavier. Because I knew, this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of hers. And this time? I wouldn't just watch. I'd make sure she got exactly what she deserved. No matter what it took.